Brielle Kane pushed through the revolving glass doors of the Astoria Grand, clutching a tray of fresh espresso shots like her life depended on it, which, given her boss's caffeine addiction, wasn't far from the truth. "Don't spill, don't trip, don't," she muttered under her breath, eyes locked on the tray as she weaved through the polished marble lobby, and that's when she slammed straight into a solid chest. The tray wobbled. One espresso cup tipped. She managed to catch it midair, but not before a few drops splashed onto the sleeve of the man in front of her. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," she gasped, setting the tray on a nearby table. "I wasn't looking, it's fine," the man said, brushing his sleeve with effortless calm. She looked up. Tall, broad-shouldered, dark hair neatly styled, expensive suit perfectly fitted, and those eyes piercing blue direct like he didn't just see her but read everything she wasn't saying. "You okay?" he added, his voice smooth but low, almost amused. "Yeah. Just on a mission to deliver caffeine before my boss combusts," she said, forcing a laugh. "Sorry again." He looked down at the tray. "That for the front desk." "Nope, 5th floor PR firm." "I'm the assistant caffeine mule and occasional plant waterer." Sounds like a lot of hats. Brielle gave a half smile, already reaching for the tray again. "Welcome to entry-level life. Have a great day." She turned to walk away when he said, "What's your name?" She blinked. Brielle Kane," he nodded slowly. "Nice to meet you, Brielle Kane." She didn't ask for his name, she didn't have time. But she noticed the way the concierge rushed to greet him as she stepped into the elevator and how the bellhop practically sprinted to take his luggage. Whoever he wasn't just some guy on vacation. 30 minutes later, she was back at her desk on the 5th floor, typing up meeting notes when her coworker Zara leaned over. "Did you hear? Nathaniel Kessler just checked in downstairs." "Who?" Zara's eyes widened like she'd just been slapped. "You don't know who Nathaniel Kessler is, CEO of Kessler Innovations, tech billionaire. Forbes 30 under 30, he's staying here for a week. Probably to finalize that merger with the Walker Group." Brielle's stomach flipped, tall, blue eyes, expensive suit. "No," she whispered. "Yes," Zara confirmed. "He's even hotter in person." Brielle sank lower in her chair. She didn't expect to see him again. Guys like Nathaniel Kessler didn't hang out with girls delivering coffee in knockoff heels. But the next day, while she waited for the elevator, the doors pinged open and there he was, standing alone inside. He looked up from his phone and smiled. "Brielle, you remembered. You don't forget someone who almost baptizes you in espresso." She laughed as she stepped in. He pressed the button to the 5th floor. "You know where I work?" she asked. "I asked," he said simply. The elevator doors closed, silence stretched. "Are you always this quiet in elevators?" she asked, trying to ignore the way her heart picked up speed. "No, just trying to figure out how to ask you out without sounding like a total creep." She blinked. "You want to ask me out?" "I do. I'm an assistant. And I'm a man who thinks you're interesting. Is that a problem?" She stared at him, stunned. "I don't know, is this how billionaires flirt?" "I wouldn't know. I've never flirted with someone who made me forget about a boardroom full of executives." She flushed. "I don't even have dinner plans tonight," he added. "So unless you're busy," she hesitated. "Are you sure you don't do this with every assistant you meet?" "Positive." She looked at him, really looked at him. There was charm, sure, but there was something else too, earnestness. She couldn't explain it, but she believed him. "Okay," she said. "Dinner?" He picked her up outside the hotel at 7 sharp, dressed in a navy suit with no tie, sleeves slightly rolled. He opened the car door himself, not a driver in sight, and took her to a rooftop restaurant with panoramic views of the city. The table was already waiting. Candles, wine, a small bouquet of white peonies in the center. "Do you bring all your dates to places like this?" she asked, settling into her chair. "Actually, no," he said. "This is my first date since a long time." "Why now?" He looked at her, his tone softer. "Because you didn't recognize me, you weren't pretending." "That's rare." She sipped her wine, unsure how to respond. Dinner passed in a blur of laughter and stories. He told her about growing up in California, building his first app at 16, and how being rich wasn't nearly as fun as people imagined. She told him about her chaotic family, her dreams of becoming a creative director, and how she once spilled coffee on a client's laptop. He laughed so hard he nearly choked. By dessert, something shifted. The city lights sparkled around them and his hand brushed hers, warm and steady. "I like you, Brielle," he said quietly, "and I don't mean for tonight, I mean more." She stared at him. "I don't even know what to say," she whispered. "Just say you'll see me again." She smiled. "Yeah, I'll see you again." They left the rooftop an hour later. He walked her to her door on the employee floor where she stayed in a tiny comp room the hotel provided for staff who worked late. He didn't lean in for a kiss. He just looked at her. "I'll wait for you tomorrow," he said, and he did. Every day for the next 3 days they met for late dinners, early breakfasts, and long walks through the city. He never rushed, never pushed. He just listened, laughed, and made her feel like the most important person in the room. But on the 5th day, everything changed. She was called into a meeting unexpectedly. The Walker Group wanted a presentation ready for the next day, and her boss was freaking out. Brielle stayed up all night getting it done. When she finally emerged at 6 in the morning, bleary-eyed and exhausted, she found Nathaniel waiting outside the hotel cafe. "You didn't text," he said. "I don't have your number," she replied, too tired to process how good he looked in a simple white tee and slacks. He stepped forward slowly. "Then I'll just have to keep showing up until you do." She stared at him, heart thudding. And then, without thinking, she kissed him, one soft, uncertain kiss that turned into something much deeper. When they finally pulled back, breathless, he whispered against her lips, "I'm not going anywhere, Brielle." And in that moment, she believed him. Brielle closed the door to her staff room, her lips still tingling from the kiss. She leaned against the wall, heart pounding in a rhythm that refused to calm. There was no denying it now, whatever this was between her and Nathaniel, it was real. Terrifyingly real. The next morning greeted her with a knock on the door, far too early for her to be functional. She cracked it open, hair in a messy bun, wearing a faded sweatshirt. A bellboy stood there, holding a garment bag with a small white envelope attached. "For Miss Kane," he said. She took it, confused. The envelope was thick, the paper textured like something from a royal invitation. Inside was a handwritten note. "Tonight, 7. Wear this." Brielle opened the garment bag and nearly dropped it. Inside was a floor-length satin gown in a deep wine color, elegant and understated, the kind of dress that didn't scream luxury but whispered it with every seam. She ran her fingers over the fabric, stunned. She'd never worn anything like this. She didn't even know where he'd gotten her size. At exactly 6:45, another knock came. This time, a chauffeur waited with a sleek black car parked at the curb. She stepped into the backseat, nerves twisting through her stomach as the city blurred past the window. When the car stopped, she looked up and forgot how to breathe. They were at the Royal Heights Gallery, its grand stone facade bathed in golden light. She had interned there once, long before she could afford to attend any actual events. Tonight, the entrance was flanked by velvet ropes and a sea of photographers. Before she could panic, the car door opened and Nathaniel stepped in. He paused when he saw her, and this time he was the one left speechless. "You look," he said, then shook his head. "There's not a word good enough." She laughed quietly, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "Thank you." He reached for her hand. "Come on. I want you beside me." As they walked past the cameras, she stayed close, trying not to flinch at the flashes. Inside, the gallery glowed with chandeliers and soft music. Waiters floated by with champagne flutes, and the air smelled faintly of jasmine and old money. "Nathaniel," a man called out, striding toward them in a tailored tuxedo. "Didn't know you were bringing a guest." "I didn't want to come alone," Nathaniel replied easily, placing a hand on Brielle's lower back. The man's eyes flicked to her, curious. "I'm Harrison, one of the gallery's trustees." "Brielle," she said, extending a hand. "Pleasure to meet you." He arched a brow, clearly not expecting her confidence. "Likewise." As Harrison turned away, Nathaniel leaned close to her ear. "You handled that better than half the executives I know." "I used to intern here," she whispered back. "I learned how to fake composure while alphabetizing donor plaques." He laughed quietly, and the sound settled something inside her. They strolled through the gallery, stopping in front of a piece she recognized, a sprawling oil painting of a storm captured mid-surge. "I love this one," she said. "The chaos, the movement, it's like it's alive." Nathaniel studied her. "You see more than most people do." "I'm used to being invisible," she said, then instantly regretted it, but he didn't flinch or look away. "Not to me." After the fundraiser, they snuck out through a side entrance and walked along the waterfront. The moon shimmered on the river and the noise of the city faded behind them. "Nathaniel," she said, stopping. "What is this?" He turned to face her. "What do you mean? This us, you. And I'm just trying to survive New York without overdrafting my account." "You're not a project, Brielle," he said, voice steady. "I didn't say I was. I'm not here because I want to fix you. I'm here because you make me feel like I'm not performing all the time." She stared at him, unsure how to respond. "My world," he continued, "is full of people who want something, investors, strategists, opportunists in designer suits. You're the first person in years who's looked at me and seen a person instead of a portfolio. You don't exactly make it easy to see past the surface," she said gently. "Maybe I don't want to anymore," he admitted, "but with you I do." She looked down at the pavement. "I'm scared, so am I. But I'd rather be scared with you than safe with anyone else." A few days later, everything cracked. Brielle was sitting in the staff lounge, scrolling through emails when a news alert popped up on her phone. She clicked it without thinking. Kessler CEO rumored to be dating hotel staffer. Cinderella in Manhattan? The article featured a blurry photo of her and Nathaniel leaving the gallery together, and a list of humiliating details about her life, her salary, her position, even the address of the staff quarters. Her stomach dropped. She barely registered the sound of the door opening. "Brielle," Nathaniel stepped inside, holding his phone. "I just saw, how could they know all that?" she demanded, standing. "Who leaks something like this?" "I didn't tell anyone. But someone did." "Someone close to you?" He looked genuinely stunned. "I'll find out who. I promise you I didn't want this. You said I wasn't a project, but now I'm a headline," she said, voice cracking. "I didn't sign up for this, Nathaniel. I didn't ask to be put in your world." "You didn't have to ask," he said. "I brought you in because I wanted you there. And now I'm the joke of the hotel," she said bitterly. "Everyone's staring. I can't even walk to the cafe without someone whispering, 'I'll make it right.'" "How?" she asked. "You can't undo what's already out there." He took a step closer. "Then I'll give them something else to talk about, something that makes the truth louder than the gossip." She shook her head, overwhelmed. "I need time. I just need to breathe." Nathaniel didn't try to stop her as she walked past him, but as she left the room, part of her wanted to turn back. She just didn't know if she was ready for what turning back would mean. Brielle hadn't returned any of his calls. Nathaniel sat at the back of his town car, parked just beyond the service entrance of the Astoria Grand, watching hotel staff come and go. He wasn't sure what he was waiting for, maybe a glance of her, maybe a sign that she was willing to hear him out. But every hour that passed without seeing her made his chest feel tighter. Across the city, his PR team was in flames. They wanted to spin the rumor into a rebranding opportunity. Tech tycoon finds love in the real world. Nathaniel had shut it down immediately. There was nothing strategic about what he felt for Brielle, and he wasn't about to let anyone reduce her to a talking point. He pressed his palms together, elbows on his knees. He could fix hostile takeovers, navigate billion-dollar acquisitions blindfolded, but right now, he had no idea how to reach her without making things worse. The passenger door opened. His assistant, Drew, climbed in and handed him a folder. "You asked for a list of everyone who accessed internal guest logs in the last 72 hours. IT flagged a breach." Nathaniel flipped through the pages, eyes narrowing as he scanned the names. "She's on here," he said, holding up one page. "Hallie Vance. She was at the gallery, the one who asked about Brielle. Her badge was used to access security footage and guest profiles. She's married to a columnist at The Observer. We think she leaked it." Nathaniel's jaw clenched. "Handle it discreetly, no lawsuits, but make sure they know I'm not bluffing." "And Brielle?" Nathaniel didn't answer right away. He finally looked out the window. "She needs to hear this from me." That night, Brielle stood in front of her mirror, brushing her hair with slow, absent strokes. Her phone was on silent, face down on the tiny dresser. Her body felt heavy, like everything she'd been holding in was catching up all at once. A soft knock came at the door. She opened it cautiously, expecting Zara or a hotel manager. But it was the concierge, the older gentleman who always remembered her name, even when she worked double shifts. "There's something you should see," he said gently. "Come with me." She followed him down the hallway, unsure what to expect. They took a service elevator to the rooftop, a space usually reserved for high-tier events or private functions. But tonight, it was empty except for a single table set beneath strings of warm light. Candles flickered in glass hurricane lamps. A violinist stood off to the side, playing something slow and aching, and there, waiting by the table in a dark charcoal coat, was Nathaniel. She didn't move. "I had to see you," he said quietly. "I didn't want you to find out like that. Someone I trusted sold us out." "That doesn't change what it felt like," she said, stepping closer. "I was humiliated." "I know," he said, voice low. "And if I could take that moment from you and carry it myself, I would, but I can't. All I can do is be here now and tell you the truth." She crossed her arms. "Why me?" He let out a breath. "Because around you, I don't have to pretend I'm invincible. You ask questions no one else bothers to. You don't care about my bank account. You care about my silences." She looked away. "I don't want a version of you that's been polished for a spotlight," he continued. "I want your sarcasm, your messy hair at 7 in the morning, your terrible coffee orders. I want the woman who tells me when I'm being arrogant and doesn't care if I like it." She hesitated, torn between wanting to believe him and fearing what it would cost her if she did. "You made me feel seen," she whispered. "And then suddenly the whole world was seeing me, judging me. I didn't know how to stand in that kind of light." "I don't want you to stand in it alone," Nathaniel said. "Let me stand there with you. Let me protect what we're building." Her throat tightened. "And if I say no?" she asked. He reached into the pocket of his coat and pulled out a small velvet box, not a ring, but something else. He opened it slowly. Inside was a vintage fountain pen, deep navy with gold accents. The exact model she'd once mentioned during dinner, the one her grandfather used to write letters. "I know you want to be a creative director one day," he said gently. "Write your own story. Let this be the first sentence." Tears stung her eyes. "You remembered." "I remember everything you say." She stepped closer, looking up at him. "I'm still scared," she admitted. "Me too," he said. "But I'd rather be scared with you than numb without you." She reached for the pen, fingers brushing his. "I want to try," she said quietly. "But we do this my way. No hiding, no pretending, and if it gets hard, we talk. No more disappearing." "No more disappearing," he promised, drawing her into his arms. The violinist's music swelled as they leaned into each other, city lights sparkling in the distance. The rooftop felt like a world apart, like time had paused just long enough for them to find each other again. She didn't know what would come next, but for the first time in days she didn't care, because when he looked at her, he didn't see a headline, he saw her, and that was enough. Rain tapped gently against the windows of the cafe across from the Astoria Grand, the kind of soft drizzle that made the streets glow and the world feel quieter. Brielle stirred the foam on her cappuccino with a wooden stick, watching the swirl dissipate. She hadn't planned to come here, habit had brought her. This was the place she always stopped before late shifts, but tonight she wasn't working, she was waiting. "Sorry I'm late," Nathaniel said, entering with damp hair and the scent of rain still clinging to his coat. "You're 2 minutes early," she said without looking up. "Still counts." He pulled out the chair across from her and sat down, glancing at the mug in front of her. Cappuccino, he said. Don't get too impressed. It was the only thing I didn't need to explain how to make. He didn't laugh. Not right away. He just looked at her like he was trying to memorize the way she held her cup with both hands, her pinky always slightly raised, unintentionally elegant. I talked to the gallery, he said. Hallie's been barred from future events. The Observer issued an apology, quietly of course. I didn't want it to turn into another headline. You didn't have to do that, I know, but I wanted to. She set the cup down, her fingers tightening around the handle. I've been thinking, he leaned back. That sounds ominous. She didn't smile. I'm not the kind of person who needs to be rescued, she said. And I don't want to be someone you save, I want to be someone you walk beside. Nathaniel's brow creased slightly. I never thought you needed saving, I know, but I needed to say it. He nodded once. So where does that leave us? She looked outside, watching a couple dash across the street under a shared umbrella, laughing. I think it leaves us here, she said, starting something on purpose. Not because it's convenient or dramatic or perfect, but because it's worth it. Nathaniel reached into his coat and placed something on the table. It was a key card. She glanced at it, confused. What's this? Top floor of the Astoria. I had the penthouse reconfigured. Not for me, for you, her jaw tensed. Nathaniel, not to live in, he interrupted quickly. To design, it's empty. A blank canvas, I want you to turn it into whatever you see fit. A gallery, a workspace, an art lounge, a branding studio, whatever you want. She stared at him, stunned. Why? Because you said you wanted to build something, and I believe in what you see when you look at the world. He paused. And because I want to invest in you, not as a charity, not as a gesture, as a partner, her voice faltered. You're serious. I've never been more. She ran her thumb over the edge of the key card, heart pounding. I don't know how to accept something like this. Then don't think of it as accepting, he said. Think of it as claiming what's already yours. That evening, she walked into the penthouse for the first time. It was stripped of its usual opulence, no furniture. No decor, just floor-to-ceiling windows and a view that stretched from the bridge to the harbor. The only thing inside was a large easel, a sketch pad, and a note, "Start here." She picked up the pencil and stood in silence for a long moment, the city unfolding in front of her like a promise. Then she began to draw, not for work, not for anyone else, just for her. 2 weeks later, the space had transformed. Clean white walls, floating shelves, a sleek desk beneath the eastern window. Her own design boards leaned against the far wall, and the first of her curated art installations was already being arranged near the entrance. She was standing by the window when Nathaniel stepped inside, holding a paper bag. I brought lunch, he said. Figured you'd forget to eat. I did, she admitted, grinning as she took the bag from him. You're getting good at this. At feeding you or knowing when you need something. Both. He walked to the center of the room and looked around, spinning slowly. You've changed everything. Not everything, she said. I left the windows. He turned back to her, his expression softer now. I meant me. She stopped, her fingers brushing the edge of her desk. I was thinking, he said, stepping closer, about that night you almost spilled espresso on me. Thanks for the reminder. He laughed under his breath. I was in the middle of reviewing a merger that could have brought in over $200 million. I left the call halfway through. My COO thought I was losing my mind. And were you? A little, he said. But it's the best decision I've ever made. She reached for his hand, weaving her fingers through his. I used to think love only happened in stories, she said quietly. Like the ones I read when I was a kid, but this feels better than fiction. He lifted her hand to his lips. That's because it's real. Later that night, a private dinner was held on the rooftop, the same rooftop where they had found their way back to each other. But this time, it was filled with people. Colleagues from the hotel, emerging artists, a few gallery contacts, and her family, flown in without her knowing. Nathaniel stood at the center of the room, raising a glass. Most of you know Brielle Kane as a designer, a creative, someone with terrifyingly strong opinions about typography. But I know her as the woman who reminded me how to live, who reminded me that no amount of success means anything without someone to share it with. Brielle covered her mouth, her eyes wide. I didn't plan to fall in love, Nathaniel continued, but I did, completely, irreversibly. And I don't want a future that doesn't have her in it. A hush fell over the rooftop as he stepped toward her and reached into his pocket. He didn't kneel. He didn't need to. He opened the box, revealing a simple gold ring with a single diamond set alone. I want to build a life with you. Not in headlines, not in penthouses, but in moments like this. Will you marry me? Her hand trembled as she reached for his. Yes, she whispered. Yes. The rooftop erupted in cheers, but all Brielle heard was the sound of his breath, steady against hers, and the quiet certainty that this was exactly where she was meant to be, not as an assistant, not as someone lost in the noise of other people's expectations, but as the woman who walked into a hotel lobby and found a love that turned her whole world right side up. The first morning they woke up as an engaged couple was quiet, filled with golden slivers of sunlight cutting through gauzy curtains and the warmth of tangled limbs beneath a linen duvet. Brielle lay still for a moment, eyes closed, listening to the steady rhythm of Nathaniel's breathing beside her. Her hand drifted to the ring on her finger, the cool weight of it a constant reminder that everything had changed and nothing had all at once. Nathaniel stirred, his arm tightening around her waist. You're awake. I've been thinking. Dangerous, he teased, voice rough with sleep. I want to tell my parents myself, not through some article or photo or third cousin who reads gossip sites. He lifted his head, blinking away sleep. Then we'll fly out. Today, she sat up slowly, brushing her hair away from her face. You do that. I want them to know this isn't a phase, that I'm not a headline. I'm the man who's going to love you for the rest of his life. She looked down at him, heart full, and nodded. Okay. Let's go to Connecticut. The ride out of the city was unusually serene. No horns, no impatient drivers weaving through traffic. Just the soft hum of tires against pavement and the kind of silence that only existed between people who no longer needed to fill the air with words. When they reached her childhood street, lined with maple trees and crooked mailboxes, Brielle's stomach twisted. She hadn't brought anyone home in years, especially not someone whose net worth could fund the town's entire infrastructure. Nathaniel glanced at her as he parked in front of the modest brick house. Tell me if I'm overdressed. You're wearing jeans. Exactly. Terrifying. She gave a dry laugh and led the way up the front steps. The same wind chime still hung from the porch, faded and barely hanging on. Her mother answered the door, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Brielle, she said, surprised. Then her gaze shifted to Nathaniel. And this must be. Nathaniel, he said, offering his hand. It's very nice to meet you, Mrs. Kane. Her mother's eyes flicked to the ring on Brielle's hand. She didn't say anything right away. Inside, the living room hadn't changed. The same mismatched cushions, the same family portraits slightly askew on the wall. Her father joined them soon after, and Brielle sat between her parents on the couch, Nathaniel beside her. I know this is sudden, she began, fingers laced tightly in her lap. But it's not impulsive. We've taken time. We've been through things that tested us, and I love him. Her mother folded her arms, cautious. You're not just caught up in a whirlwind. No, Brielle said. I'm grounded. I've never been clearer. Nathaniel leaned forward slightly. I didn't come here to impress you with my name or my money. I came because your daughter is the most extraordinary person I've ever met, and I plan to build a life with her that makes her proud. There was a long pause. Her father finally cleared his throat. Well, I suppose if you're going to be part of this family, you better be able to beat me at cards. Nathaniel blinked. I beg your pardon, her father stood, already grabbing a deck from the side table. Sit down, son. We play for honor in this house. Brielle burst into laughter as Nathaniel was pulled into a game he didn't understand the rules of. But by the second round, he was laughing too, sleeves rolled up, thoroughly losing to a man who took immense satisfaction in bluffing him every hand. As they drove back that evening, Brielle rested her head against Nathaniel's shoulder. They like you. I think your dad likes winning more. They'll come to the wedding. I was hoping they'd walk you down the aisle. She looked up at him. You've thought that far ahead. I've thought about the color of the flowers, the food, the music, and how I'm going to keep my composure when I see you walking toward me. The wedding was held 6 weeks later on the rooftop of the Astoria Grand, the same place where he'd first told her he wouldn't let her face the world alone. But this time, it was transformed. White roses hung from trellises, soft strings filled the air, and the skyline glimmered in the background like a silent witness. When Brielle stepped into view, the entire rooftop fell quiet. Her gown was simple, sleek, with a train that shimmered like starlight. No veil, just a cluster of white peonies tucked behind her ear. She walked barefoot down the aisle, her choice, because she wanted to feel every step, every piece of this moment. Nathaniel's breath caught as she reached him. He didn't speak. He just took her hands, and in his eyes was everything he hadn't put into words. Their vows weren't scripted. They spoke only to each other, and when the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, the city burst into applause. Fireworks lit the sky, but Brielle only saw him. Later that night, they stood together on the balcony of their suite, wrapped in a shared blanket, the sounds of celebration still echoing below. "You okay?" he asked. She turned, her head resting against his chest. "I'm more than okay. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." They didn't talk about what came next. They didn't need to. The future was wide open, but they would meet it together, hand in hand. 1 year later, the penthouse design studio was fully operational. Brielle had launched her own brand, Kane, a boutique creative agency that focused on identity and visual storytelling. Her first major campaign was picked up by a global fashion house, and her second by a museum. Nathaniel remained CEO of Kessler Innovations, but now he took weekends off. He cooked badly. He left his socks everywhere. He read poetry with her on Sundays and built her a reading nook with his own 2 hands, despite having no clue what a stud finder was. They fought sometimes about her tendency to leave open sketchbooks all over the apartment, about his insistence on replying to emails at midnight. But they always came back to each other. Always. On their anniversary, he surprised her with a blank canvas and a note that said only, "Create something for us." She painted a skyline with 2 figures standing at the edge of a rooftop, arms linked, backs turned to the world. Above them, the words, "We rose together." And they had.